Now, what was once seen as emerging technology is now mainstream. And we're talking about blockchain, and blockchain technology applications have now made their way into not just everyday technology, but also into everyday conversation. But while cryptocurrency is making headlines, the innovators are really pushing the needle and developing applications which will foster the tech that will power tomorrow's. And conversations around DeFi, decentralized finance, are gathering steam and already disrupting the emerging blockchain ecosystem. Now, talk about the speed of innovation, right? So, what does this rising crypto adoption mean for the future of investments? In this fireside chat, we'll be talking about the future of DeFi, the rules, the regulations, the risks, as well as the rise of smart contracts and the resulting disruption in the tech space. So, please join me in welcoming Douglas Horn, the white paper author and the chief architect of the Telos public blockchain. He's also the founder and CEO of GoodBlock, a DApp development company which creates cutting-edge DApps, tools, and games. Thanks for joining us, Douglas. Good to have you come along.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
And please also welcome back Nischal Shetty, the founder and CEO of WazirX, India's leading crypto exchange. Welcome back, Nischal.
Hey, Ashwin. Thanks a lot for having me here.
Now, DeFi, right, is really hailed as having the potential to cause massive disruption in the future. Quickly want to understand from both of you gentlemen, what is the current state of DeFi utilization for especially consumer-led products that I can pick up and use? Douglas?
Well, DeFi is very rapidly growing. For anyone not yet in the know, it's generally called decentralized finance, but you could also call it democratized finance, because the goal is to bring the types of financial tools that were previously only available to the very rich and well-connected to anyone. There are some challenges there because at the moment, and until recently, it's been very expensive because of transaction fees and challenges like front running, but Telos, for example, has done a lot to remove it in front running and bring the costs way down. And so we're really looking forward to DeFi truly being democratized finance that's available to anyone in the world soon on Telos EVM.
Thanks for that. We're going to be talking about a little more about that in just a moment. But Nischal, how are you reading the space? I know you are, innovating and really pushing the needle. I mean, you started the NFT exchange and you're constantly trying to see what next. But is DeFi on the radar, and how do you read the current state of where we are now?
Yeah, see, I think I look at DeFi as still being in the building phase. But the good thing is, we are not in a state where it's only building, but we are seeing some applications and some great success with that. I mean, lending, for example, has really worked well, and staking is working well. And what we're seeing is about, I think, close to $200 billion locked in the whole DeFi protocol around all the blockchains put together. And that's a great, stamp of approval from, I would say, the people around the world. When I look at DeFi, I think about it as, the global financial hub that we've never been able to access before, because anything to do with finance has always been localized to our geography, to our countries, including the rate of interest or the kind of financial products that you could get. It largely depended on where you live, and depending on how sophisticated your economies are, you got access to that kind of quality. Now, suddenly, what happens is, irrespective of where you are, in a developing nation, in a developed world, you all can plug into the same ecosystem. A lot like the internet. Today, we are all talking out here, irrespective of where we are. All we need is an internet connection, and we can use the same products and services. So I think DeFi is just showing the world that you don't have to restrict your financial access to your geography anymore. And I think this is just the beginning. What DeFi is doing right now is just trying to replicate the existing financial world. The next level of growth will be when it'll innovate or out-innovate the existing financial world. And that will be when the fun starts. But it's still a long way to go before that happens, I guess.
Douglas, you want to quickly give me a number as to when DeFi is going to out-innovate the existing financial world?
Overtake the traditional financial world? That's going to be a while, but less time than you think. Definitely less than 10 years. Probably a little more than 5 years. It's amazing. It's there's a great saying: people underestimate what they can, overestimate what they can do in 1 year, and underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years. And I find it to be very true. 10 years for sure. More than between 5 and 10 years. More than 5, less than 10. It's going to overtake the traditional economy.
And you've given me a contracted version of that saying as well. I think it was Bill Gates who said that, people overestimate what you can do in 2 years and underestimate what you can do in 10 years. And that seems to have come down to 5 years. Well, innovation for all.
I said 10 years. I was paraphrasing it. It is a Bill Gates quote, and many people are aware of that. I didn't want to make it sound like I thought that was original.
No, it's a pretty cool thing. If you think that, that 10 years now needs to be brought down to 5 years because you're just running with the kind of technology that you're doing. And let's talk about Telos, right? In the sense that you are developing technology which not just makes it far more affordable. You're also looking at bringing on things like, Frontrunning, which is essentially curtailing front-running. How big is this problem, and how much of a solution is Telos going to be in, being able to curtailing front-running and also really making it far more economical for people to be able to use this blockchain?
Right. So front running is a very big problem. It since the beginning of 2020. It has been practically $1 billion of value stolen from people trying to make transactions by bots or the Ethereum miners themselves jumping ahead. The problem has moved from the beginning of 2020. This was largely done by individuals who were running botnets and whatnot that would look at the mempool, the transactions waiting to be processed, see what seemed profitable, and then try to get ahead of those by paying more gas. It's evolved since that time into the state where the miners themselves, in part due to the loss of revenue that they have had from the London hard fork, where miner revenues were greatly reduced, they are having to do this themselves, and so they realize that miners can construct any kind of block they want, and so they put their own. They see these transactions, they put their own transactions in front of it. And they call it now miner extracted value or maximum extractable value, either one, MEV. But it's not fair. It's like if NASDAQ, was, or the NYSE, computers just said, oh, that's a big share, that's a big Tesla order. I think I'll put my own in front of it, right? No one would accept that. Everyone has to accept it. There's even tools like DEX tools, the popular DeFi tools that you can go and look at, and you can see it'll show you a little red burglar icon. Exactly when you've been robbed. It's a very big problem, and the biggest problem is that there's really not much that can be done on it on Ethereum because that is the way the protocol is designed. And most of the EVMs that we have today that are touting faster, cheaper DeFi are just forks of some manner of the Go Ethereum implementation. So they don't change it in any way either. Only Telos eliminates it by first making the block so much faster that there's no public mempool sitting there for people to comb through, but also by having the way our software works ensure that there's a first in, first out ordering of transactions. So you simply don't get that. And then finally, I'd say the exciting things that are happening is because Telos EVM, which we recently launched on our mainnet, and now has AnySwap, SushiSwap, a number of leading protocols coming on in just a couple of days, and going to grow from there, I think. Now that you have this, it's the first time that you've had both Solidity code, or the Ethereum code, and the EOS.io smart contract code that are running on the same system, and we can actually run those on the same transaction. You could run because Ethereum runs inside an EOS.io contract. We can call an EOS.io contract that then checks calls an Ethereum smart contract DeFi action, and then at the end does something no one's ever done before. It checks your balance. It will be able to check your balance and determine if your balance has turned out to be lower at the end of the transaction than at the beginning, and if so, it can cancel it if you use that feature. That technology is called profit or cancel technology. We call it Telos Share Profit, and there's no place else that has it. I think that is going to make people really excited to have a fast, cheap place where to do DeFi, where they're not being front run and can even eliminate the possibility, if they choose, of a transaction working in a way they don't understand and causing them a big loss. That's going to change it for a lot of people.
Well, you use the words fast, cheap, and first in, first out. You've already got a lot of people looking at you and saying that, okay, that's what we're looking for. Talking about challenges, right? And since you're solving the problem of Frontrunning, just wanted to quickly come to you. I mean, scam coins are really one of the bigger barriers in really building trust with consumers, and you've been fighting it for a long time and trying to help people understand how to do it right, doing the research right, educating consumers. Where are we right now with Indian consumers understanding what is a good way to be able to invest in cryptocurrencies?
Look, I think one of the good things about this ecosystem is it's been getting smarter every year. So the kind of scams you saw in 2017 when the bull run happened, they don't really happen anymore. People have become more aware about the kind of products to use, and the kind of exchanges to use, or the kind of investments to make into IDOs or ICOs, whatever you call it. However, because this whole ecosystem is so new and there's so much of new technology that new kinds of scams emerge, and that's where I think education will play a large part into ensuring that people don't repeat the same mistakes or even make new mistakes which will cost them a lot. And I think that's happening on a large scale, both in India and globally. We are pushing for regulation. That's going to be one more step, though we want to make sure that it does not affect the innovation. But at the same time protects consumers from getting into any of the scammy projects or tokens. We often hear about rug pulls. I mean, I think the latest and the talk of the town is the whole Squid Game coin that happened. And because there's so much of FOMO in the market right now, I think it's just you have to spread the awareness amongst people that you can't be rich overnight. And if someone is getting rich overnight around you because of crypto, either it's luck or it's fake. Just have a long-term vision. Have at least a 3 to 6 years timeline for you to be that overnight success. And then I think take the steps one slowly and steadily. Because I hear about people putting all their money. They get into crypto today, and tomorrow they've invested everything they have with the dream of getting it 10x return or 100x return. I don't think it works that way. And if it was that easy, I think everyone would be billionaires right now, whoever is in crypto. So I think take a cautious approach. It's just like any other investment. It's not magic out here that's happening. And out of hundreds of projects, I think 5 or 10 are going to really succeed. So take a conscious effort to do some research. I think that's something that we all as an industry have been pushing and should push more for.
Well, if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably most definitely too good to be true. Douglas, you were saying something,
Well, I think I generally agree with Nischal. I think he's got a great beat on what is happening in the DeFi space, and I would say, unlike 2017, where there are a lot of scams that now we don't have in the same way, we have sort of a whole new set of scams as well. But there's also things to think about, like, just because something doesn't ultimately work out doesn't mean it was intended as a scam, right? There are people creating all kinds of NFTs. I look at NFT sets right now as I looked at ICOs in 2017. There's going to be a lot. Some small amount will become very valuable. And some will, in 3 years, they'll just be clogging up your wallet and making you ask why you invested in them. That's just the nature of investing in new technology. So that's not typically a scam. The best way to avoid scams, I think, is to look for the hallmarks, which are undoxed developers and unaudited code. and I think those, or or no code at all. I think those are telltale signs of these types of scams where somebody can build up a lot of value in a short amount of time and then quickly rug pull. And like Nischal says, you shouldn't expect to get wealthy overnight. More to the point, you can get wealthy overnight. You shouldn't expect to have any kind of long-term growth overnight growth that persists, right? So if you can get very wealthy overnight, and then you can lose it the next night, So a lot of people who are in DeFi don't actually sell all their positions before they go to bed because it's a very high stress project, right? It's a very high stress way to make a living. The other way, of course, is to just invest in projects that have real value, that are really doing building and adding new features, and that's where I was always focused. That's where Telos focuses. But it's hard to deny that there are projects that don't have that don't claim any any development at all. They're very brazen about the fact that they're just a fork of a fork, but they somehow manage to engage the community in a way that actually does give them a form of value. Now, how long that lasts, hard to say.
Then, talking about the hallmarks of a good crypto coin, on reading the code and checking the code. Just a quick question, Nischal, how many people do you know out there in India who actually do this due diligence before buying code? Is it like, usually when there's an IPO, I don't know many people who go through the entire document before you go and say, okay, I'm going to buy stock. But is this due diligence really something that's common? Am I missing a bus out here?
See, it's a lot like there's always this percentage of people who do the due diligence, and probably they are the ones who will then spread it amongst their friends and people around them. So if we look at the absolute numbers, I would say a small percentage, maybe 5 or 10% of the people, they take special interest. That's all what we do, right? We want to, sometimes we are not researchers. Sometimes we just want to hear it out, and that's where your influencers, your blog posts, and all of those things come into the picture. So I see, it may not be someone directly reading the white papers, but when you follow the right influencers and they've read the white papers and they talk about it, so that's indirectly you reading the white papers. So that way, I think, and that's the community awareness I'm talking about, which is increasing thanks to all of the good influencers and the good bloggers around the crypto ecosystem today. And I think, but ultimately the newcomers who come in quickly and just buy, I think they're the ones who get affected the most. And this is where we need to push more for awareness about what the white papers are and what a good code, or what, like what Douglas said about projects building features. All of this, I think a lot of people are not aware of this, because if you look at the traditional investment, it's always where you get into investment when the company's gone big, it's created revenues, it's created everything, and then you finally get to buy in. Out here, it's the other way around. The company is probably new, maybe not much is built, it's untested. So it's a little complicated for newcomers to understand this ecosystem, which is I always say, don't invest for a while and get into the ecosystem. Just maybe try your hand at getting some airdrops. Don't invest. Try to get some airdrops. In that process, you'll learn a lot.
Fair enough. I know you did something with, Douglas?
I would agree. I would say that, especially in the recent past, as the main platforms for DeFi were extremely expensive and you had to pay $200 for a transaction, that meant that you could really only make transactions that were large value. It's pretty much a way for the already crypto rich people to engage. Now that we have 1 penny, 2 penny transactions on Telos EVM, that's going to change the amount that you can afford to get in with. Previously, I think Nishal's advice is great. But it's largely because you didn't have a chance to make a small investment. You couldn't possibly do that. Now you can make small investments, and I think people would do better to test the waters with small investments, to test their own belief and move into it, and not have to just push in everything because the transaction fees are so high. In decentralized finance, there is no gatekeeper at the beginning and at the creation part of project, and so the gatekeepers that come in then are exchanges and the people who will educate people. Although I would say, let's not forget that India has one of the most computer literate technical populations, in the world. There are many, we work with developers from India all the time. So there's no shortage of people who could fill that role. And as it grows, I think, and becomes, more accepted, I think there'll be even more people in the Indian community who will become sort of like analysts for and fill that role in traditional finance.
And really, Douglas, crypto is huge in India at this point of time. And people, and the barrier to entry to crypto is also not very high. And since you have people who spend a little more than $1, when you say 100 rupees, and make their, get into the world of crypto and to understand just what it is. And there's been a huge shift in attitude as well, right? In the sense that we had a parliamentary panel meet with, leading crypto stakeholders recently, and the commentary coming out of there was, largely positive and indicative of, the potential that this space holds. How are you reading developments in India, and a quick overview on globally? What do you make of the sentiments that governments are exuding when it comes to the crypto space?
Well, I think that it's in a completely different space than it was even 1 year ago in India. You say that the cryptos are very large already, but they're not large at all compared to what they will be in a couple of years, right? It feels large at the time, but then we're going to look back and go, oh, remember 2021 when we thought it was big? It's nothing. It is set to explode. I think that the government actions were quite harsh, when the capital controls and changing currency, happened. That was actually terribly onerous for the Indian people, in my view, and I feel like perhaps the government has made its big move and is now able to back off, because why would any country want to knock itself out of the way of important emerging technology? India certainly has always seemed to be very aggressively pursuing those. So I think that the real advancements of blockchain, once we have more examples of things that add real value and touch on the real world economy, what we call that, then it's only going to expand, right? Once it's a little bit easier to point to some things and say, see, it's not just speculation. People are using D-Store for all their decentralized storage. That's a real use that has nothing to do with cryptocurrency. There's real financial action going on in trading, and at a level that people who are only trading 100 rupees can still be profitable at, because the fees are so low. When those things and more happen, supply chain, it's very possible that the world's supply chains may go to crypto, go to blockchain even faster than they previously would have, because of the great disruptions in them right now. So I think that in the Indian economy, I think that India's penchant for being very aggressive on new technologies and latching onto them and becoming leaders in them is going to overtake the fear of digital currencies. And I think globally, it's very hard to call globally, but I think that one of the biggest movements that's happening in the global economy right now is massive inflation amongst all the major currencies, and that is great for that's great for the U.S. The U.S. is printing basically printing its way out of money, but every other country in the world that has loans denominated in U.S. dollars is really getting hit incredibly hard. So I think that what we're going to see is we're going to see by necessity, as that money printing by all the major central banks just keeps going up and up over the last couple of years. I think that is finally going to, people are going to say, hey, a trillion here, a trillion there. Eventually, it adds up to real money, and the inflation is going to hit people hard. And cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin that has a very easy, predictable inflation rate, or Ethereum where it is at times deflationary now due to the new burns under the London hard fork. There are good points and bad points about that, depending on who you are. And then Telos, which has had no inflation, it's not created any new tokens in the last 2 years, and won't for at least the next 2 years. Those types of organizations and coins are going to be very attractive to people in the world looking for real world technologies, that are real world ready and are also have firm economic economic models that don't rely on inflation. I think those will become very attractive. I think the ones that are highly inflationary will probably cycle into the cryptocurrencies that have solid inflationary models, and not into USD or the USD stable coins as it did in the past, because people are going to be very conscious of those destabilizing. So they may go into algorithmic stable coins. They may go, but I think there's going to be a people seeking value in good economic models and those that show real world usage compared to others. So I think there'll be a bifurcation of the crypto market to those that have shown actual use cases and those that haven't. That's my prediction for the next couple of years if inflation continues as we think. But the last couple of years has been a new black swan event every 2 weeks. So who knows what's going to happen?
Indeed. Thank you for that really comprehensive overview of that, Douglas. Nischal, I know I ask you this question every fortnight or so when we catch up. What do you make of the developments? How's the last couple of weeks been?
I think if you're asking about regulations, I think we've seen some really rapid movements. Like till last year, I think India wasn't really, no one knew what the government stand was and what the direction this would go in. And this year we had a finance minister talking about regulation. We just had a parliamentary committee meeting. So I think we've gone from we don't know or we don't want to be involved to let's figure this out and let's see what this innovation is all about and how do we participate. So I think that's a big shift for a large country like India to do. And I would say it's happened faster than anticipated. Now, how does this evolve is, again, a large country like India cannot come up with regulations overnight because there's so many moving parts here. And it's going to take a while. But at least the good thing is we are on that path now towards trying to understand and regulate crypto, and that's a win for the markets, I think, in general. Let's see. I think we have to keep pushing. I've been pushing for regulations for over 1,000 days now, and I think we'll continue to do that. And I'm sure eventually, not just India, but every country is going to regulate because if they don't, they're going to miss out on this innovation. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody left out the internet revolution. Everyone eventually participated. And I think that's the same thing that's going to happen to crypto as well.
And I think the consumer sentiment also has been that everybody's glad that the government is participating in conversations. I mean, everybody knows that the regulations are not going to come overnight, but there has been, and this is a meaningful shift in the sense that that now they're having the conversation with the industry to be able to see how you can bring in the regulations in a meaningful manner. And just to close the conversation today, gentlemen, and blockchain DeFi being seen as the next frontier, and to calibrate expectations, right? What are some of the things that you've been hearing about the possibilities of DeFi and blockchain, which you believe are not immediately realistic, and people need to temper their expectations from these things? Douglas?
Oh, that's a tough question. I get to go first. Okay. I think that what do people need to temper their expectations about in crypto? I think that people need to temper their expectations about about nations like El Salvador adopting Bitcoin or other cryptos as legal tender. I think that will continue to be rare. I think you will see more central bank digital currencies than adoption. It would be great. I would love it, but I think that we're already seeing a lot of actual on the ground problems in El Salvador in that experiment, and that was already a very unique experiment because El Salvador did not have its own national currency. It used the U.S. dollar, so it was the situation that I mentioned earlier. It was forced into before many others. But depending on how the international inflation goes, I think that it could be. It just won't be. It won't be a global movement. I think that it's going to be a while before. I think that some NFTs are going to be great, but it's probably going to be a while before these become really understood as an art form and investment vehicle by more than a small number of people. OpenSea has actually only has 16,000 customers, right, worldwide. Who've more, or that was the case recently. It's probably growing all the time, but it's a much smaller market size than you would imagine, especially when you see new assets coming out with 10,000 punks or 10,000 whatever, and you realize, well, there's only 16,000 people who are actually buying these on a regular basis. So I think those things will take longer to emerge than people anticipate. I think that payment platforms will probably take a little longer to emerge, but I do think they will grow quickly because it is better, right? I think that the people's expectations around legalization or regulation, they should temper their expectations there because these are governments we're talking about, and the most likely outcome is that a lot of the regulation will be misguided and based on a lack of understanding by people in the political process, not by technologists. And so that's where I'd caution. That's where I'd temper my excitement, but only because you asked that specific question. I'm very excited. Mostly I'm excited about things that we're working on in Telos that are new governance systems, new advanced form of DeFi, all kinds of new exciting things that touch on and decentralized storage, things that touch on the real world. I'm extremely bullish on crypto and blockchain technology over the short, medium, and long term in terms of what it can do. But I think there are expectations people have that are going to be hard to meet in the next 6 to 12 months.
Love that response. So comprehensive. Nischal?
Yeah, I think one of the most important thing to understand is while crypto is growing and overall the markets are growing everywhere, it's also reaching a stage where there's inflation, and I think what we should be aware about is like the macroeconomic factors do affect crypto as well. So we all need to be a little more cautious, and this is hyper experimentation right now. So a lot of projects will not turn out the way you want them to. Speaking of DeFi, I think while DeFi is growing really rapidly, one of the limiting factors is probably the existing blockchains and the speed at which the transactions that they can process per second, which is already turned out to be a bottleneck. And I know that a lot of solutions are being built, but I think we're yet to see some of those solutions really come to market or get adoption, and it will take some time. And that in between phase is where I think maybe the speed of innovation or the speed of participation might get affected, because I'm already seeing a lot of people staying away because of the high gas fees, for example. So I think we are probably yet to see some really large decentralized projects with cheap transaction fees emerge. And in a way, I think all the best to Douglas with what he's doing. And I think we need more of that so that eventually people don't have to be worried about the transaction costs. Today, what is happening is that seems to be the bigger problem. That's weird, because that should not be a problem. Me as a participant in DeFi should not be thinking about the fees that I'm going to pay. but more of the services that I'm going to access. So I think I would love to see that innovation really go to the masses, and we get out of this whole temporary. I think it's a temporary issue of high fees being the point of contention. But let's hope that gets solved soon.
Well,
Yeah.
Douglas,
Can I share a small experience there about? I want to share an experience about that surprised even me. So I've been involved in DeFi and blockchain and crypto technology for quite some time. And when we brought out Telos EVM on our mainnet, and Sushi Swap just came in, and we're starting to trade things. I found that it completely changed my experience around DeFi, because I just stopped, because it happened so fast, and I stopped even thinking about fees because they were so nominal. And it changed my experience. It changed it from something where I was waiting, spending time thinking about how much gas to use, because we have flat gas fees. You don't have to do any of that. It just completely eliminated. I wasn't prepared, even as the person who said, "Hey, let's do this," and was one of the biggest leaders of its development. I was surprised by how it changes the experience of using DeFi. So I think that's something that a lot of people are going to be pleasantly surprised with, and then new people who come into the market and don't have any expectations going in are just going to feel like it's more like a mobile app transaction than the DeFi blockchain transactions that we've all, the OGs are used to. So I think that's already changing, and I think the change will happen really quick, because even now, when I go back and try and work on a different chain that doesn't have that, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like if you're you get used to having your car have like a backup, camera, so you don't have to look back, and then you get in an old car that doesn't have it, and you're like, oh my god, how do we live? How do we manage to do this before we had backup cameras? And to me, it's the same experience when I go back on Ethereum and try and do trades and move things over to these faster systems, because it just completely revolutionized the experiences. So I agree with Nischal. It's going to be that's what's necessary for us to have this become a more consumer experience than a fan experience or a technologist experience.
Well, I'm into that. This was fascinating, and measured, insightful. Honestly, this has been one of the most insightful chats that we've had here on Business Insider India, and a lot of your thoughts, really, which are incredibly grounded in reality, yet giving a glimpse into the immense potential that exists. And I'm going to be looking forward for the next few months, and I look forward to having both of you back again on Business Insider India in the next few months again to essentially review the conversation that we've had, so that you can help us again understand how much the needle has really moved. And again, perhaps the last part of this conversation, in us having to calibrate our expectations from what is real and what is something that is slightly far-fetched into the future, is perhaps my biggest takeaway. Once again, thank you so much again, Mr. Douglas. It's a pleasure to have you join us here again, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.